The knock came 3 times, hard enough to rattle the cabin walls, loud enough to drown out the wind that screamed through the Bitterroot Mountains like something wounded, like something hunting. Marisol Quinlevin did not move at first. She sat by the dying fire, rifle across her lap, eyes fixed on the door. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold, from memory. Behind her in the small room beside the kitchen, 12-year-old Wendell Brackenridge coughed in his sleep. The sound was wet, rattling, the kind of cough that buries children in pine boxes before the spring thaw. She had no money for a doctor. The nearest town was 5 miles east. In this storm, 5 miles might as well be 500. The knock came again, louder. Marisol stood up slow. Her boots creaked against the rough pine floorboards. She raised the rifle, pointed it at the door. "Who's there?" she called. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. A long pause. The wind howled. Then a voice answered through the storm. Deep, slow, the kind of voice that belonged to a man who had not spoken to another soul in a very long time. "Name's Rurik Vandermeer, ma'am. I'm not looking for trouble, just shelter." Marisol's grip tightened on the rifle. Strangers did not come this far up the mountain, not in winter, not at night, not unless they were running from something or hunting something. "There's a town 5 miles east," she called back. "They have a hotel." A pause. 5 miles might as well be 50 in this weather, ma'am. My horse won't make it. I've got money. I'll pay to use your barn." Marisol closed her eyes. Every lesson hard life had taught her was screaming the same word. No. A woman alone did not open her door to strange men in the dark. A widow with a sick child did not invite mountain shadows into her home. That was how stories ended badly. That was how women like her ended up in shallow graves behind frozen creeks. Then Wendell coughed again, that wet rattling sound, and Marisol's chest tightened in the way it had tightened a year ago, when the boy's father had been crushed under a fallen fence post, when she had stood over his grave and whispered to the only family she had left in the world, "I will not lose you too." If she sent this man back into the storm, he would die. That weight would sit on her soul forever. She drew a long breath, then another. "Step back from the door," she said. "I'm armed." "Yes, ma'am." She heard boots scrape against wood. She heard him obey. That alone surprised her. She unlatched the door. The wind hit her first, stole the breath from her lungs, pushed snow against her face like cold ash. Then she saw him. The man on her porch had to duck just to fit beneath the eaves of the cabin. 6.5 feet of mountain, shoulders so broad they blocked out the storm behind him. A dark beard frosted white, snow clinging to his coat, a coat that looked like it had been stitched from a bear. His hands were bare, massive, scarred across the knuckles, the kind of scars a man earns from years of work that hurts. But it was his eyes that stopped her, gray, tired, older than the rest of him. and carrying something that looked almost like Mercy. Behind him stood a horse, steam rising from its flanks, head hanging low. The animal was near collapse. "You're smaller than I expected," the man said quietly. Marisol blinked. "Excuse me. The way you talked through the door, I thought you'd be 6 feet tall, with a beard." Despite herself, despite the rifle, despite every alarm bell in her head, her lips twitched. "I'm tall enough to pull this trigger." "Yes, ma'am. I don't doubt it." He raised his hands, palms open, empty. "The barn is around back," she said. "There's hay in the loft. You can stable your horse." She paused. "You leave in the morning." Something shifted in his eyes. Not surprise, not gratitude. Something quieter. "Thank you," he said. "I'm in your debt." "It's Mrs. Quinlevin," she replied. "And you can pay it by leaving." He nodded once, led his horse into the storm. She closed the door, locked it again. Then she sat by the window with the rifle across her lap, and she did not sleep that night, not for a single minute. Every creak of the cabin made her grip tighten. Every gust of wind made her think the man was coming back, but he didn't. When the gray dawn finally broke through the clouds, the storm had buried the world under drifts taller than her waist. The trees outside looked like ghosts, white and bent and silent. She needed to check the animals. That was the thought that pushed her out of the chair. She pulled on her father's old wool coat, the one she had kept after he died, the one that still smelled very faintly of pipe tobacco. She stepped outside. The cold hit her like a hand. She walked toward the barn through snow that came up to her knees. Her boots were too thin. Her gloves were too thin. Everything she owned was too thin. Halfway to the barn, her boot caught on something hidden under the drift. A buried log. Marisol fell hard. The breath was knocked from her lungs. The cold rushed in. Her face hit the snow. Her hands sank in up to the wrist. The rifle skidded away from her. She tried to push herself up. Her arms gave out. She tried again. Her legs would not work. Cold. So cold. Cold like the blood inside her had turned to glass. Cold like the world was being pulled away from her in a slow gray tide. Her lashes froze together. She thought about Wendell, the boy alone in that cabin, the boy who would wake up, find her gone, walk outside, find her body in the drift. A child should not have to find a body. Not again. That was when something lifted her. Strong arms wrapped around her, pulled her from the drift as if she weighed nothing at all. Heat surrounded her, not imagined heat, solid, alive, the kind of heat that comes off a man who has been working in the cold. A deep voice cut through the fog. "I've got you, ma'am. Stay with me." She tried to say something. Her lips would not move. The last thing Marisol felt before the dark took her was the steady rise and fall of a chest broad enough to be a wall. When she woke, warmth pressed against her skin. A fire crackled nearby, not the small fire of her hearth, a bigger fire, built up high. Someone had stacked the wood for her. Her boots had been pulled off, set neatly by the stove. A wool blanket had been placed over her body, up to the chin. Her feet burned, the painful burn of circulation returning to limbs that had almost said goodbye. Easy, a low voice. Her eyes flew open. He was kneeling by the fire, not close to her, across the room, hands held up where she could see them. Marisol tried to sit up, pushed herself upright with weak arms, reached instinctively for the rifle that wasn't there. "My rifle, by the door," he said, "loaded, right where you left it." She blinked at him. He had stood her gun up against the wall, where she could reach it, where she could shoot him, if she wanted to. He had given her the option. That was the second thing that morning that surprised her. "You shouldn't have been out in that weather," he said. "I needed to check the animals. They're fine. I fed them." She stared at him. "Why?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because you gave me shelter." She tried to think of a response. Could not. The barn door banged open behind him. Marisol's heart leaped. "Ma." Wendell stood in the doorway, pale, shaking, eyes huge as he stared at the massive stranger sitting across from her. The boy had seen Rurik. The boy had been afraid. Of course he had been afraid. He had been ill. He had woken to find Marisol gone. And then he had found her, inside, with a giant. "I'm fine," Marisol said quickly. "Wendell, look at me. I'm fine. I just fell in the snow. He helped me." Wendell did not look at her. He was still looking at Rurik. The mountain man did something Marisol did not expect. He moved slow, deliberate. He sank down, knee to the floor, hands open on his thighs, so that he was lower than the boy, so that the boy was looking down at him, not up. Marisol's throat closed. A man who knelt for a child. A man who knew that being big was sometimes a thing you had to make smaller. "You're Wendell," Rurik said. His voice was softer now. "Your mother told me about you. I'm sorry I scared you." The boy did not move. "Are you a bad man?" Wendell asked. The question landed in the room like a dropped plate. Marisol opened her mouth to say something, to protect the moment, to soften it. Rurik answered first. "Used to be," he said, "trying not to be now." Marisol's breath caught. It was not the answer she expected. It was not the answer most men would have given. Most men would have said, "No, of course not." Most men would have lied to the boy, to soothe him, to get into his good graces. Rurik had told the truth. Wendell was quiet for a long time. Then, "My ma says everyone deserves a chance." He looked at Marisol. That's what you said, right? Yes, she whispered. That's what I said. Wendell nodded slowly, like he had thought about it, like he had decided. Okay then. He walked over to the fire, sat down on the rug, held his small hands toward the heat. Like the giant kneeling 3 feet away was just another man warming himself in a kitchen. Rurik glanced at Marisol. Something soft crossed his face, something that looked almost like pain. She did not know it yet, but that look was memory, the shape of another boy, another fire, a long time ago. Breakfast, she said. Her voice came out hoarse. She cleared her throat. Breakfast is in an hour. You can eat with us. Rurik nodded once. Yes, ma'am. He stayed. 3 days passed. Marisol kept telling herself it was temporary. The roads were still rough. The drifts were still deep. It made sense for him to wait a little longer. That was all. But each morning she woke to the sound of hammering, to wood splitting clean beneath an axe, to a deep voice humming low and steady as he worked. And each day, something broken was made whole. The fence posts no longer sagged. The roof no longer leaked over the kitchen. The barn door that had scraped against the frame and cursed her patience for 9 months now swung smooth and easy. He did not ask permission. He did not announce his work. He simply did it, as if fixing her world was the most natural thing a man could do. Wendell followed him everywhere. The boy watched Rurik with open wonder, learning how to swing a hatchet without taking his own foot off, how to approach a horse so it would not spook, how to read the weather by watching how the smoke from the chimney bent against the sky. Rurik never raised his voice, never rushed him, never made him feel small. Marisol noticed how careful the man was, how he knelt instead of towered, how his enormous hands moved slow and precise around the boy's small fingers. It unsettled her more than she liked, because monsters did not act like this, because the men of her life had not acted like this. On the second night, Wendell's cough came back, hard, worse than before. Marisol woke at midnight to the sound of it. She rushed into his small room, found him red-faced, burning up, lungs whistling with each breath. She pressed her hand to his forehead, pulled it back, hot, too hot. Her stomach turned over. This was the kind of fever that took children. This was the kind of fever that had taken her own mother 8 years ago, in a sweating Tennessee summer. The cholera had moved through their cabin like a black wind, took her father first, then her mother, left a 16-year-old girl alone with an aunt and uncle who had decided she was livestock to be sold. This was the kind of fever that her uncle had said God sent to test the worthy. This was the kind of fever Marisol had been afraid of every winter of her adult life. She rushed back to the kitchen, threw open the cupboard, empty. She had no medicine, no money for medicine. She pressed her hands to the table, squeezed her eyes shut. She had been counting pennies for 2 months, choosing between flour and salt, between firewood and lamp oil. She had not been able to afford the small bottle of camphor at the Silver Hollow General Store, and now her boy was burning. She heard footsteps behind her, heavy, slow. Rurik stood in the kitchen doorway. He had pulled his coat on over his union shirt. His boots were laced. How long has he been like this? His voice was low, controlled, like a man who had seen this before. Just tonight, she said. He had a small cough yesterday. I thought it was passing. I thought... Her voice broke. I don't have anything for him. Rurik nodded. I'll be back. He turned. Where are you going? She asked. Up the slope. It's still snowing, not as hard as last night. Rurik. The use of his first name surprised them both. He paused at the door. What is it, ma'am? She wanted to say, Don't leave us. He needs help. I cannot do this alone again. Instead, she said, Be careful. He looked at her for a moment. Something in his eyes shifted, like she had pulled a pin from somewhere deep inside him. I will. The door closed. He came back 90 minutes later. She had lost track of the clock. She had been sitting beside Wendell's bed, wiping his forehead with cool water, whispering things she did not even believe anymore. Promises a poor woman has no right to make. The door opened. Rurik stepped inside. His coat was caked white. His beard was frosted. He carried a bundle of dark bark, a handful of dried roots, a scrap of pale lichen. He laid them on the kitchen table like a man laying down a sacrament. Willow bark, he said. Echinacea root, old man's beard, the lichen, for the lungs. Marisol stared. How do you know what these are? He did not answer right away. He filled the kettle, set it on the stove, crushed the bark between his palms. His huge hands were precise, careful. He measured. He did not waste. My wife was a field nurse, he said quietly. In 64, 65. She rode with the medical wagon at Vicksburg. She knew every plant on every road we passed. She used to make me memorize them. Said I was useless with my hands and good with nothing else. He almost smiled. The smile did not reach his eyes. She was wrong about my hands, but she was right that I needed to learn something useful. Marisol's throat felt thick. She passed. He was quiet for a long moment. 7 winters ago, typhoid fever. My son too, Eli. He was 11, almost the age of the boy in there. Marisol could not breathe. She had thought he was a stranger, a drifter, a man with a price on his head. She had not thought he was a father. She had not thought he was a man who had stood at a small grave and tried to remember how to stand at all. I'm sorry, she whispered. He shook his head, not at her apology, at something else, something inside himself. Come on, he said gently. Let's get this into him. They worked side by side. Rurik held Wendell up, so gently, so carefully, like the boy was made of paper. Marisol spooned the warm mixture between cracked lips, drop by drop, until the cup was empty. Then Rurik laid the boy back down, pulled the blanket up to his chin, pressed 2 fingers to the side of the boy's throat, counted the pulse against the pocket watch in his hand. "Strong," he said, slowing. "Good." He stood. His head almost touched the ceiling beam of the small room. "Ma'am." "Marisol," she said, "if we are going to sit by a sick child together, you can use my name." He looked at her. Marisol. The way he said it. Soft. Careful. Like her name was a thing he had been handed and was afraid to drop. She felt something small inside her chest, a warmth she had not asked for. She shoved it down, quickly. "You should sleep," he said. "I'll watch him." "You don't have to." "I know." 2 words, but the way he said them. She sank into the chair beside the bed. Within minutes, she was asleep. When she woke, the sun was up. Wendell's breathing had eased. The whistle was gone from his lungs. There was a damp cloth on his forehead, folded neatly, refreshed. Rurik was gone from the small room. She found him outside, splitting wood. The pile beside the cabin was now twice the size it had been the day before. On the 3rd day, Bridget Pernod arrived. Goldie Pernod. Everyone called her Goldie because of the streak of silver-gold hair she had carried since she was 25. She was 62 now. She owned the bakery in Silver Hollow. She had been Marisol's only friend for 2 years. She rode up the slope on a mule wagon, piled with sacks of flour, and a small parcel of beef Marisol could not afford and would not be allowed to refuse. Goldie took one look at Rurik on the roof, one look at Marisol standing in the doorway with flour on her apron, and smiled. The smile of a woman who had already decided how the story ended. "He's tall," Goldie said, lighting a thin cigar. "Tall and handy. That's a dangerous combination." "He's a stranger," Marisol said. "Aren't we all? At first." Goldie squinted up at the roof. "That's a nice patch he's putting on. Good clean work. He been here long. 3 days. And he hasn't tried to put a hand on you." "No." "Then he's already nicer than the last one." Marisol's jaw tightened. Goldie did not smile this time. She softened. "Forgive me. That was unkind to say. About the dead. But the dead don't always deserve kindness, do they?" Marisol did not answer. Goldie put a small hand on her arm. "Be careful, child. There's a man been asking around town. Big fellow, well-dressed. Soft hands, hard eyes. Calls himself Octavian Drakmar. He's looking for the property your husband sat on. Says Magnus owed him money." Marisol went still. "He's been asking for 2 weeks now. He's persistent. He'll find his way up here eventually. If you have any old papers of Magnus's, any letters, any cash you don't know where it came from, you ought to find them." Goldie's eyes flicked toward the roof. "And maybe you ought to tell that man up there what kind of trouble he stepped into, so he can choose for himself." Marisol swallowed. He told me he used to be a bad man. Did he now? He said it to my boy, to Wendell's face, not to me. Goldie was quiet for a long moment. A man who tells a child the truth when a lie would be easier, that's a man who has decided to be different. She squeezed Marisol's arm. Don't waste him, dear. If he is good, don't waste him out of fear. You have spent enough of your life being afraid. That afternoon, Marisol went down into the root cellar. She had been avoiding it for weeks. Magnus had spent so much time down there, counting, muttering, hiding. She had not wanted to know what he was hiding. But Goldie's words sat in her chest now. Any old papers, any letters, any cash you don't know where it came from. She lit the small lamp, climbed down the wooden ladder. The cellar smelled of cold dirt and stored apples. She walked slowly, knocking her boot against each board on the floor, listening. Most boards thudded. One sounded hollow. She knelt, pried the loose plank up with her fingernails. Underneath, wrapped in old burlap, was a flour sack. She pulled it out. Inside, $800 in bound cash, more money than she had seen in her life. Her hands started to shake. There was a folded letter beneath it, yellowed, sealed with red wax. The wax had been broken once, then set back into place poorly, as if Magnus had tried to hide that it had ever been opened. The seal had a name pressed into it. Octavian Drachmar. She read the letter. She read it twice. She read it 3 times. It was an instruction. A list of dates. A list of routes. The names of 3 towns west of the Bitterroot. A reference to crates. A reference to weapons. A line that said the crow will not buy them, but the others will push the price. She did not understand all of it, but she understood enough. Magnus had not been a poor farmer. Magnus had been part of something bad, something that involved guns and money and men like Octavian Drachmar. She climbed out of the cellar with the sack pressed to her chest. She was shaking. Rurik was in the kitchen. He had brought in fresh kindling. He turned to her, saw her face, set the wood down. Marisol. She held the sack out. She held the letter out. I need you to look at these. He took the letter first. She watched his face, watched as the polite tiredness drained out of him, watched his jaw harden. His eyes turn cold. He did not speak for a long time. Where did you find this? He asked. His voice was different, not the soft voice he used with the boy, not the careful voice he used at the breakfast table, the voice of the man he had been before he came up the mountain. In the cellar, under a board, Magnus hid it. Did he tell you he had it? No. Did anyone come asking for it before today? No, just Goldie, just now. She said a man named Drachmar is in town. Rurik closed his eyes. For 1 second. Just one. Then he opened them, and he was steady again. Marisol, I need to tell you something, and after I tell you, you can ask me to leave, and I will leave. Tell me. The man who wrote that letter, Octavian Drakmar. I worked for him. Her heart dropped. When, after my wife and son passed, I had nothing, nowhere to be. He hires men to do his ugly work. I was one of them, for 3 years, until he asked me to do something I wouldn't do, and I broke a man's head on a rock, and the law called it murder, and I ran. He paused. 3 years on the mountain after that, trapping, hunting, trying to forget what my hands had done. I came here to this part of the country because I knew Drakmar's business reached up here too. I was hoping, foolishly, that I could find proof of what he was, proof enough to clear my name, or at least proof enough to make him stop hurting other people the way he hurt me. He set the letter down on the table. I never expected to find the proof in your cellar. Marisol stared at him. She felt the floor tilt slightly. She had let a stranger into her home, and the stranger had a history with the man who had ruined her dead husband. And her dead husband had not been the man she thought he was, and nothing in her life was what she thought it was. She sat down at the kitchen table, hard. "Do you regret what you did?" she asked. She was not asking about the letter. She was asking about everything. He looked at her for a long moment. Every day. She nodded. She believed him. She did not know exactly why she believed him, but she believed him. That night, a black carriage came up the mountain. She heard it before she saw it. The grind of wheels through hardened snow, the slow clop of 2 well-fed horses, the kind of carriage that did not belong on a mountain road. Marisol stood at the window, her chest tight. The carriage stopped in front of the cabin. A short, heavy man stepped down. White gloves, long wool coat, a cane he did not need. 2 armed men flanked him. Octavian Drakmar. She knew it was him before he said a word. He smiled at her front door, a thin smile, a practiced smile, the kind of smile that had been used to take things from women all of his life. Rurik came to stand behind her at the window. He did not speak, but she felt him there, like a wall rising up at her back. Octavian Drakmar walked up to the porch. He knocked once, politely. "Mrs. Quinlevin." His voice was warmer than she expected. "My condolences on the loss of your husband. I represent a small matter of business he left unfinished." Marisol opened the door, just a few inches. "My husband is dead, Mr. Drakmar. Whatever business he left, he took with him." "Ah, but the dead leave debts, ma'am. $500, with interest, $750. He smiled again. "I'm a reasonable man. I'd be willing to take the property in lieu of cash. Land, water rights. We'll consider it square. This land is not for sale." "Everything is for sale, Mrs. Quinlevin." That was when Rurik stepped forward, slowly, so that he was framed in the doorway behind her, so that Octavian Drakmar saw him. Octavian Drachmar's smile froze. He had not expected this. He had not expected to see this man here. His eyes flicked over Rurik's face. The beard, the scars, the shoulders, recognition. Then, beneath the recognition, something else. Fear. It was very small, very fast. He buried it under the smile within a half-second. But Marisol had spent 3 years married to a man who hid every emotion behind a face. She had learned to see the flickers. Octavian Drachmar was afraid of the man standing behind her. "Well," Drachmar said softly, "what a small world." "It just got smaller," Rurik said. The two men stared at each other across the threshold. 2 armed men shifted uneasily behind the carriage. Drachmar tipped his hat. "You have 3 days, Mrs. Quinlevin, to consider my offer." "I don't need 3 days." "I think you do. I think you'll find, by the 3rd day, that you've reconsidered." He turned, walked back to the carriage, did not look back. The carriage rolled away into the trees. Marisol closed the door. She stood with her forehead against the wood for a long time. When she finally turned, Rurik was still there, still close, still steady. "He came up here," she said, "because he knew you were here." "Yes. He's going to come back with more men." "Yes." Her hands shook. She pressed them against her stomach to make them stop. "Rurik, I have a child in this house. I know. I don't know what to do." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I came to these mountains alone because I thought I had nothing left to lose. That used to be a comfort." He looked at the small bedroom door where Wendell was sleeping. "It isn't a comfort anymore." He turned back to her. "I told you you could ask me to leave. I am still telling you that. If you want me gone, I will be gone within the hour. I will lead him away from here. He'll follow me. He wants me more than he wants you. The boy will be safer." She stared at him. He meant it. He would walk back into the storm, walk back into a life with a price on his head, walk away from the first table he had eaten at in 7 years, to save a boy who was not his, to save a woman whose name he had only learned 3 days ago. She thought of every man she had ever known. She thought of her uncle, of Magnus, of the men who had touched her like she was a debt to be collected. None of them had ever offered to leave for her, only to stay too long. "No," Marisol said. Her voice was steady. "You don't go. Marisol, you don't go," she said again, "because Wendell needs you, and—" She stopped, started again. "And I need you." The cabin was very quiet. The fire popped softly. Rurik looked at her like she had said something he had not expected to hear in his lifetime. Then, very slowly, he nodded. Once. That was all. but it was enough. Later that night, Rurik sat by the fire with Wendell curled against his side. The boy had insisted, climbed up onto the bench, leaned his small body against the mountain of Rurik's arm and stayed there. Rurik had not moved. He had barely breathed, like a man holding a bird that had decided to land on him. Marisol watched from the kitchen. She heard Wendell ask the question quietly. "Are you going to stay?" "Yes." "Like, stay, stay." "Yes." "You're not going to leave like my pa did." Rurik's voice came out a little rougher. "I'm not going anywhere, Wendell." The boy was quiet for a moment. Then, "Promise." Marisol pressed a hand to her mouth. Rurik looked down at the boy, the size of his hand against the boy's small shoulder, the careful, feather-light way it rested there. "I promise." For the first time in his life, Wendell believed a man's promise. For the first time in 7 years, Rurik intended to keep one. And outside, down the mountain, Octavian Drakmar's carriage rolled into Silver Hollow with a list of names, and a list of men, and a plan that did not include 3 of them surviving the week. The storm was not over. The storm had only just begun. The morning after Octavian Drakmar's carriage rolled away, the mountain felt different, not quieter. Quieter would have been a mercy. Watched, that was the word for it. Watched, as if every tree on the slope had grown a pair of eyes overnight, as if every drift of snow was hiding something that breathed. Rurik felt it before Marisol did. He stood on the porch at first light, coffee cooling in his hand, eyes on the tree line. He did not move for a long time. He was listening. Mountain men learn how to listen the way a doctor learns how to read a pulse, not for sound, for the absence of sound, for the wrong kind of silence. The wrong kind of silence had arrived. Inside the cabin, Wendell was at the kitchen table, eating oatmeal, slowly, carefully, like a boy who had decided that grown-up things were happening and a boy ought to keep his head down. Marisol watched him from the stove. The boy had not asked one question about Octavian Drakmar. He had not asked about the cash from the cellar. He had not asked why Rurik had stood at the window all night with a rifle across his lap. But the boy knew. Of course he knew. A child who has lost too much develops the same kind of ear a soldier develops. He hears what is not being said. Marisol set a plate of biscuits in front of him. "You feeling stronger today, my love?" He nodded. "Lungs not whistling." He shook his head. "Wendell." He looked up, brown eyes too old for his face. "Tell me what you're thinking." He chewed, swallowed, set his spoon down very carefully. "He's going to come back, the man with the white gloves." "Yes, and he's going to bring more men." "Yes." "Is Mr. Vandermeer going to fight them?" Marisol did not answer right away. She wanted to lie to him, the way mothers want to lie to children, the way she had wanted Magnus to lie to her on the worst nights of her marriage. But she remembered what Rurik had said to Wendell 3 days ago. Used to be. Trying not to be now. A man who told a child the truth. She owed her boy the same. I think he might have to, she whispered. Wendell looked at his oatmeal, quiet for a long time. Then he said something that broke her. Good. I want him to. Her throat closed. Wendell, I want somebody to fight for us, for once. He picked up his spoon, started eating again, like he had not just said the saddest sentence Marisol had heard in her life. That afternoon, Rurik walked the perimeter. He moved slow, silent for a man his size. He knelt at the tree line, studied tracks, stood, walked another 50 paces, knelt again. Wendell followed at a careful distance. The boy did not speak. The boy understood. When a man is listening to the woods, you let him listen. After an hour, Rurik finally turned. Wendell, come here. The boy walked over. Rurik knelt in the snow so that he was eye level with the child. He pointed at a small print at the base of a pine. Tell me what you see. A boot print. How big? Big. Bigger than yours. How fresh? Wendell hesitated. I don't know. Look at the snow inside the print. Is it loose, or has it crusted over? Wendell knelt, studied, touched the edge of the print with a small gloved finger. Loose. How loose? Real loose, like last night. Rurik nodded. Good. Now, why does it matter? Wendell thought. Because somebody was up here last night, watching the cabin. Yes. The boy looked up at him. Rurik looked back. Steady. Calm. The way a father looks at a son who has just done a hard thing right. Wendell, I want you to know something. Okay. I'm not going to teach you how to use a rifle so you can hurt people. Okay. I'm going to teach you so the woods never scare you, so you can walk in and out of these trees and know exactly where you are, so nobody can sneak up on you in your own home. Do you understand the difference? Wendell nodded slowly. You're not making me a fighter. No. You're making me safe. Yes. The boy's lower lip wobbled for 1 second. Just one. Then he steadied it. My pa wanted to make me safe. He didn't have time. Rurik did not move. I have time, Wendell. The boy threw his small arms around the mountain man's neck. Rurik froze for a long heartbeat. Then he closed his arms around the boy. Carefully. So carefully. Like he was afraid he would break something he had only just been allowed to hold. Marisol watched from the porch. She did not even notice she was crying until the wind dried the tears against her cheeks. That night, Wendell was already asleep when Marisol stepped out onto the porch. She had told herself she was not going out. She had told herself she was going to sit by the fire. So, mend the hole in Wendell's coat sleeve, be a respectable widow alone in her own house. Instead, she had pulled on her shawl, pushed open the door. Rurik was sitting on the bench at the far end, a cigarette burning small and orange between two huge fingers. He looked up when she stepped out. He did not stand. He did not say anything. He just shifted slightly on the bench to make room. She sat, not too close, not too far, for a long time. Neither of them spoke. The wind moved softly through the pines. Snow drifted down, light, almost lazy. Marisol watched her own breath rise white in the cold. "How old is your boy?" She turned. He had asked it gently. 12. Eli was 11, the year I lost him. She swallowed. "You loved him?" "Yes." "Tell me about him." Rurik was quiet for a long time. She thought he might not answer. Then, "He liked horses. He liked the way they smelled. He used to put his face right into the manes and just stand there, breathing them in. His mother said he was going to grow up to be a horse doctor. He said he was going to grow up to be just like his pa." His voice went rough. "I am very glad he didn't." Marisol could not speak. He took a long pull on the cigarette. The orange light flared, then dimmed. "My wife. Her name was Lenya. She was a steady woman, not soft. Steady. There's a difference. Soft can be folded. Steady cannot. She was steady." "What was she like?" "She had a laugh that did not match her face. Big laugh. A man could find his way home in the dark on that laugh. People thought she was stern. She wasn't. She was just careful with who she handed the laugh to." He paused. "You remind me of her. A little. Not in the face. In the way of being." Marisol felt heat in her chest. She looked at her hands. "I am not steady, Rurik. I have been afraid every day of my life since I was 16 years old." "Being afraid is not the opposite of being steady, Marisol." She turned to him. "What is?" He thought about it. "Quitting." She let out a small laugh, surprised. "Then I am steady." "Yes, ma'am. You are." She did not know what to do with that. She had not been called steady in 24 years. She had been called other things. Useful, dutiful, lucky to have been taken in, lucky to have been married, lucky, lucky, lucky. Steady was new. She sat with it. The wind picked up. She shivered. Just a small shiver. She tried to hide it. Rurik unfolded a wool blanket that had been beside him on the bench. He held it out. He did not put it on her. He held it, so she could decide. She took it, pulled it around her shoulders. The blanket was warm from his side of the bench. She did not know why that mattered. It did. Marisol. Yes. Can I ask you something? Yes. Did Magnus ever hit you? She did not answer for a long time. The honest answer cost her something to give. The honest answer felt like dropping the last small lie she had told herself for 7 years. Yes. How often? Often enough. And you stayed. I had nowhere to go. I was sold to him, like a calf, by an aunt and uncle who thought a girl was a thing you traded for, a piece of land. By the time I was old enough to leave, he had told everyone in 3 counties that I was difficult, half-mad, lazy. Nobody would have taken me in. And he made sure I had no money of my own. That is how it works. They make you small first. Then they tell the world you were always small. She said it all without crying. She had told no one this. Not Goldie, not the priest in Silver Hollow, not the doctor who had once asked her about the bruise on her wrist and accepted I fell without looking at her. She had told a stranger she had known for 6 days, because he had asked. That was all. Because he had asked, and she had wanted to answer. Rurik did not speak. He set the cigarette on the porch rail, crushed it out with his thumb. Then, slowly, he placed his huge hand, palm up, on the bench between them. He did not reach for her. He laid his hand down and waited. She looked at it for a long time. Then she put her smaller hand into his. His fingers closed around hers, so gently. His hand was a wall, and his hand was a shelter, and his hand was the first hand she had ever held that was not pulling her towards something she did not want to go. Magnus does not get to define you, Marisol. I know. He does not get to take this from you either. What? Whatever this is, whatever you decide it is, or isn't, he doesn't get to be in the room. She squeezed his fingers. You are not like the men I have known. I used to be, he said. Worse than them. I am telling you that. So you know. I know what you used to be. You told me, to my face. You told my son, to his face. She turned to look at him. That is the difference. He did not kiss her that night. She would remember that, for the rest of her life. He did not kiss her. He held her hand, and that was the moment her marriage truly ended. Not when Magnus died. Now. The next morning. Wendell pulled Rurik aside. The boy had a strange look on his face, pale, determined, like a child who had been carrying something too heavy for a long time and had finally decided to set it down. Mr. Vandermeer. Rurik. Rurik. Yes. I need to tell you something, and I don't want to tell Ma, because it'll hurt her. Rurik knelt. Tell me. The night my pa died. Yes. I wasn't asleep. I said I was, but I wasn't. Okay. I went to the barn to bring my pa his coat. He forgot it in the kitchen, and when I got close, he was talking to somebody, so I waited behind the door. Because grown-ups don't like when you walk in on grown-up talk. Smart boy. There was another man with him. I never saw him before. He had a scar, right here. Wendell touched his own cheek, a line from the corner of his eye to the corner of his mouth. Rurik's jaw tightened. That was Vidkun Drakmar, Octavian's younger brother, a man Rurik had known from his bad years, a man Rurik had once seen stab a homesteader in the kidney over a payment dispute and then sit down and finish his beer. Go on, Wendell. They were arguing. The man with the scar said, "You don't get to walk away. Not now, not after what you've moved for us." "What did your pa say?" "He said, the crates with the children. I didn't know there'd be children, Vidkun." Rurik went very still. "He said children." "Yes. And then he said, I'm going to the sheriff tomorrow. I'll go alone. I won't name names. Just tell them where the next shipment is." "And the man with the scar?" "He just laughed, real quiet, like a snake, and he said, 'No, you won't.'" Wendell's face crumpled, just for a moment. "Next morning, the fence post fell, on my paw. They said it was an accident." "Wendell, it wasn't, was it?" The boy was not asking. He was telling. He had known. He had known for a year. He had carried the knowing alone, because he had not wanted his mother to be more sad than she already was, because a 12-year-old in this country has been taught that men handle their own. Rurik pulled the boy close, pressed the boy's small face into the wool of his coat. "No, son, it wasn't." Wendell did not cry. Wendell had cried out his crying for his father a long time ago. He just stood there, inside the arms of a man who had never been his father, and let himself be held. Rurik went to find Marisol. She was hanging laundry on the line behind the cabin, sheets that had frozen stiff overnight. She was beating the ice off them with a broom handle. "Marisol." She turned. Her face changed when she saw his. "What?" "Wendell just told me something about the night his father died." She set the broom against the line. She listened. Her face did not move while he told her. When he finished, she walked over to the woodpile, picked up the small hatchet, started splitting a log, then another, then another. She did not speak. She just split logs until her arms were shaking, until she could not lift the hatchet anymore. Then she dropped it into the snow and put her hands over her face. Rurik stood 3 feet away, did not touch her, did not say, "It's all right," because it was not all right. He waited. When she finally spoke, her voice was gravel. "My husband helped move guns to children, Indian children, white children. I do not even know which children. It looks like both, Marisol. He brought that money home, to this house, and I cooked over it, and I slept above it, and I let a child eat off it. You did not know. That does not matter. I lived in this house. I lived with him. I told myself for 3 years that he was simply cold, that he had a hard manner, that he was the kind of man God hands hard women. I let myself believe he was just a bad husband, because it was easier than asking what else he was. She wiped her face, hard, with the back of her wrist. I have spent 7 years being ashamed of myself for being unhappy, because I thought a good wife would have been grateful, and it turns out I was married to a monster, and I was the unhappiest because something inside me knew. Marisol, I should have asked. You did not have the room to ask Marisol. He had taken the room from you. That is what men like him do. They make sure there is no room left for the questions, so that the woman in the house starts to believe there are no questions. Only her. She looked up at him. Her eyes were red, but steady. I am tired of being small in my own house, Rurik. Then don't be. I'm not. She picked up the hatchet again, drove it into the chopping block. Hard. It stuck. She walked past him toward the cabin. The widow Quinlevin had walked out of the house this morning, and a different woman was walking back in. 2 days later, a horse came up the road, a single rider, black hat, long coat, a rifle across his saddle, not drawn, but ready. Rurik watched him approach from the porch. Marisol stood behind the cabin door, rifle in her hand. Wendell pressed to her side. The rider stopped 20 feet from the porch, did not dismount. Are you Rurik Vandermeer? I am. The rider reached slowly into his coat, withdrew a folded paper, held it up. Rurik could see the printing from where he stood. Wanted. $500. Dead or alive. His face was on it. A drawing. Not very good, but close enough. Rurik did not move. You here for the money, friend? The rider was quiet for a moment. Then he lowered the paper. My name is Renford Pike. The name landed in Rurik's chest like a hand. Rurik knew that name. He had heard it from his brother in a letter from Tennessee, April 1862. Pike. Yes. You served with my brother. Yes. At Shiloh. Yes. Roderick Vandermeer, 24th Indiana. He died there. He died in my arms, son. The world tilted slightly. Rurik had not heard that. Nobody had told him that. He had been 16 years old, sitting in a kitchen in Helena, when a letter had come saying killed in action. That was all. Killed in action. Not. Held by a friend. Not. Did not die alone. Killed in action. For 22 years, he had imagined his brother dying in mud, surrounded by strangers, calling for someone who did not come. It had been Renford Pike. Rurik's hand went to the porch rail to steady himself. He spoke of you, Pike said. At the end, he said his little brother, was good with horses, and he was afraid that if he died, nobody would tell that little brother that he loved him. Rurik did not breathe. I tried to find you, Pike said. After the war, you had moved. The trail went cold, but I kept looking, on and off, for 20 years. I am not a man who breaks promises to dying men, Mr. Vandermeer, even slow ones. He swung off his horse, reached into his coat again, pulled out a small object wrapped in oilcloth. He held it out. Your brother's medal. He took it off his neck, asked me to give it to you. I have carried it for 22 years. Rurik took the medal in his hand. It was warm, from Pike's chest. A man had carried his brother against his own heart for over 2 decades. Rurik closed his fingers around it. Mr. Pike, why did you come up here today, with my face on a piece of paper? Pike did not flinch. That paper is not from a U.S. Marshal, Mr. Vandermeer. That bounty is private. Octavian Drakmar paid for the printing himself, a bait, to draw you out, to cover the killing he intends to do up here. Then why are you holding it? Because I needed an excuse to ride up your road without his men shooting me first. I was Drakmar's man for 3 years. Rurik tensed. Pike held up a hand. I quit 2 weeks ago after they put the bounty on you. I did some asking. I figured out who you were, Roderick's little brother. Why did you quit? Pike looked tired. Because I am 60 years old, Mr. Vandermeer, and I would like to die having done one more thing right. Drakmar is going to come for you, for her, for the boy. He is going to bring 15 men, maybe 20. He has done this before to other families. I know, because I rode with him while he did it. He glanced at Marisol in the doorway, tipped his hat to her. Ma'am, I have been part of bad work. I will not pretend otherwise to you. I am offering you the only thing I have left to give, which is the man who knows how Octavian Drakmar moves, and how he thinks, and how to break him. Marisol stepped out from the door, rifle still in her hand. She studied Pike's face for a long moment. Then she said, "Come in. Mr. Pike, we have coffee." Goldie Pernod arrived an hour later. She climbed off the wagon, looked at the new horse tied at the post, looked at the new man at the kitchen table, looked at Rurik, looked at Marisol, lit a cigar. "Well," she said, "I see we are forming a posse. Goldie, I brought eggs and sausage, child. A revolution moves on its stomach." She marched into the cabin, set her basket on the counter, turned around, hands on hips. "Now, before any plans get made, there is something I have not told you, Marisol, and I should have told you 8 months ago. So I am going to tell you now, with these gentlemen as witness." Marisol frowned. "Goldie, in the summer of '79, I worked for 2 months as a bookkeeper for a timber operation out of Missoula." The room went still. Drakmar lumber and land. Pike's chin lifted. You worked for Octavian. I did. I was 60 years old, newly widowed, and broke, and he advertised for a woman who could keep books. So I took the job, for 2 months, until I saw enough of his ledgers to understand that the timber was the smaller half of his business, and then I quit, quietly, and I came back to Silver Hollow and opened my bakery and said nothing because I was afraid. She looked at Marisol. I have been ashamed of that silence for 5 years, child, especially after I saw what kind of man your husband was. And then, after he died, and you started looking thinner and sadder, I told myself, if anything ever comes of his name, I will tell what I know. She reached into the deep pocket of her coat, pulled out a small leather book, set it on the table. I kept a copy of the ledger I was working on for 2 months. Names, dates, routes, shipments, payments. The other half of the letter you found in your cellar, Marisol. I have it, right here. Rurik stared. Marisol stared. Pike stared. Bridget Pernod, Pike said softly. You have been sitting on that book for 5 years. Yes, Mr. Pike, I have. And I have been ashamed every day. But shame is no use unless it makes you brave eventually. So here we are. She tapped the book. That, plus the boy's testimony, plus the letter from the cellar, is enough to hang Octavian Drakmar by his white gloves. Marisol pressed both hands against the table. Goldie. Yes, child. I love you. I love you too, baby. Now sit down. We have work to do. That night, the plan came together. Pike knew Octavian's ways. Goldie knew the ledger. Rurik knew the country. Marisol knew the cabin. Wendell was sent to bed. He was 12. He did not get a vote in this. Goldie had a contact, a U.S. Marshal in Helena, a man who had once eaten her apple pie and never forgotten it. She would ride out at dawn, down to the railroad station 4 valleys over, send a coded telegram by way of a friend in Butte, so that Sheriff Tovar in Silver Hollow would not see the message pass. The marshal could be at the cabin in 4 days. They did not have 4 days. Rurik knew that. Pike knew that. Marisol knew that. Octavian had given her 3. By tomorrow, they would have used 2. The next morning, Marisol went to town alone. This was her insistence. If I don't show my face in Silver Hollow, she said, Drakmar will know something is wrong. He'll move sooner. We need him patient. We need him thinking I am still a frightened widow trying to scrape together $750. Rurik did not like it. He hated it. But he could not argue. She rode Magnus's old gelding, wore Magnus's old hat pulled low. She rode into Silver Hollow at mid-morning, tied up at the post outside the bank, walked into the sheriff's office. Sheriff Ezekiah Tovar was at his desk, a small man, round, easy smile, the kind of smile that had won him 3 elections in a row. Mrs. Quinlevin, Sheriff, I heard about Mr. Drakmar's visit. I am very sorry for your trouble. Sit, please. I have coffee. She sat. He poured. She accepted the cup with hands that trembled. She let the trembling show. Let him see it. Let him think she was here for help. He says my husband owed money. I don't know the truth of it. I have been trying to find any papers, to make sense of it, but Magnus did not keep records that I can find. I need help, Sheriff. I have a boy. I cannot lose this land. Of course, Mrs. Quinlevin. We will look into the matter. Now, may I ask, is anyone else staying with you up at the cabin I had heard? Just gossip about a man. She smiled weakly. A drifter passed through during the storm. He helped with the snow. He left 2 days ago. Ah, yes. Good, good. A woman alone needs to be careful. Yes, Sheriff. Why don't you? Wait here for just a moment while I send a wire down to the county clerk about your husband's filings. We will sort this out. I am sure of it. He patted her hand. His hand was clammy. He stood. He left the office. Marisol counted to 10. Then, slowly, she stood, walked to the back of the office, where the small storeroom door stood half open. He had not gone to the wire office. He had gone to the back room, to his own private telegraph key, the one he used for personal business. She heard the soft click-click of brass. She crept closer. She read his message off the open key tape strip on the desk behind him. Quinlevin, here stop. Mountain man still at cabin stop. Widow lies stop. Advise. The address, Drakmar, Silver Hollow Hotel. Marisol's heart hit the back of her teeth. She turned, walked, not ran, walked, out the front door of the sheriff's office. She climbed onto the gelding. She rode out of Silver Hollow at a normal pace. When she was out of sight of the last building, she kicked her heels into the horse's flanks, and she rode home like the devil was behind her. When she came through the cabin door, she was white as paper. Rurik stood up so fast he nearly knocked the table over. Marisol, the sheriff is Drakmar's man. Pike closed his eyes. Of course he is. He sent a telegram to the Silver Hollow Hotel. Drakmar is in town. He is in town right now, tonight. They know you are still here, Rurik. The sheriff told them I lied. Pike was already pulling his coat on. Then it's tonight. What is? They will not wait 3 days. They will come tonight. Probably late. 2, 3 in the morning. Sheriff will pull his deputies away on a fake errand to give Drakmar's men a clean run at the cabin. That is exactly how he ran the Beauchamp farm in '78. Same playbook. Rurik turned to Marisol. Goldie. Already on her way to Butte, she left at dawn. The marshal cannot get here in time. No. Then it is us. Yes. He looked at her. You and me and Pike and a 12-year-old boy against 15 men. She lifted her chin. Then we make it count, Rurik. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. The plan took an hour. The hidden cellar would take Wendell and Marisol. There was a hatch behind the kitchen pantry. Magnus had built it to hide stolen rifles. Now it would hide a child. Pike would take the loft, rifle out the high window, cover the front. Rurik would take the barn. He could move between the structures faster than they could. He knew the angles. He had walked them. He had counted the steps. They prepared in silence, loaded magazines, filled lanterns with oil, stacked extra rounds within reach of every position. Wendell was given a job. He was to go into the cellar with Marisol. He was to hold a candle. He was to hold his mother's hand. He was not, under any circumstance, to come up. The boy listened, did not argue. Just at the end, he pulled something from his pocket. A handkerchief, old, folded square, embroidered in one corner with the initials A.B. Anders Brackenridge, his father's. He pressed it into Rurik's huge hand. My pa always said this brought him luck. Rurik looked down at the small square of cloth in his palm. Wendell, I want you to have it, tonight, so you come back, to my ma, and to me. Rurik knelt, slowly. He folded his fingers around the handkerchief, held it tight against his chest. For a moment he could not speak. Then he reached out, cupped the back of the boy's head with one massive hand, pressed his own forehead to Wendell's, gentle as a prayer. I will come back, Wendell. Promise. I promise. It was the second time in a week Rurik Vandermeer had made a promise. In the 7 years before that, he had not made one. Now, he had made two, to a boy who had decided without asking permission to call him Pa. At 10 o'clock at night, the wind rose, a new storm coming in. It would hide them. It would also hide the men who were coming. Rurik stood on the porch one last time, coat buttoned, rifle on his shoulder, 2 pistols on his belt, the knife at his hip that had skinned bears, the small embroidered handkerchief in his breast pocket, right against his ribs. Marisol came out behind him, closed the door softly so Wendell would not hear. She stood next to him. For a moment they did not speak. The wind picked up snow off the ridge and threw it sideways across the yard. Rurik, yes. If this goes badly, it will not. If it does. He turned to her. She was looking up at him, eyes clear, no tears, just clear. If it does, I want you to know something, so you take it with you, wherever you go after. What? She put her small hand against his chest, right over the handkerchief, right over his heart. You are not a bad man, Rurik Vandermeer. Marisol, you used to be one. You said so. To my face, to my boy's face, and then you stopped. And you stopped a long time ago. And whatever the law says, and whatever the past says, the only thing that decides what kind of man a man is what he does today. And today, You are good." He could not speak. She rose up on her toes, kissed him once on the corner of his mouth, soft as snow. Then she turned and went back inside. Rurik stood on the porch for another minute. The wind pulled at his coat. The mountain breathed slow and dark behind him. The first riders would be on the road by midnight. He touched the handkerchief over his heart. Once. Then he stepped down off the porch, into the snow, and he went to meet them. The first rider came at 2 a.m. Just one. A scout. He came up the road slow, hat pulled low, rifle across the saddle, confident in the way men get confident when they have been told the woman in the cabin is alone. He did not see Rurik. That was the point. Rurik was already in the trees, 20 paces from the road, snow up to his knees, bare coat blending into pine bark. Breath held. He had been there for 40 minutes. Mountain men learn how to wait. They learn it from the elk, from the wolves, from the long winters when one wrong move means freezing in your own boots. The scout stopped his horse at the bend, studied the cabin from a distance. The cabin was dark. Of course it was dark. They had let it go dark. Lamps out, fires banked, windows shuttered. A woman alone with a sick child would have done the same. The scout believed what he was seeing. He turned in the saddle, waved his hand once, toward the road below. That was the signal. That was when Rurik moved. He came out of the trees behind the scout, silent, huge. The horse caught his scent first. The horse spooked, tossed its head. The scout half turned in the saddle. Too late. Rurik pulled him off the horse with one arm, drove a gloved hand against his throat. Not a killing blow, a silencing one. The scout dropped into the snow, out cold. Rurik hog-tied him with rope from his own belt, stuffed a wool sock from his own pocket into the man's mouth, dragged him into the brush, out of sight. One down, maybe 14 to go. He looked back toward the cabin. Pike was up in the loft, Marisol and Wendell in the cellar. The plan was simple. Let the bulk of them come close. Let them think it was working. Then break their formation. Rurik melted back into the trees, inside the cellar. Marisol sat on a wooden crate. Wendell sat in her lap, 12 years old and too long-legged for laps, but neither of them mentioned it. He pressed his face against her shoulder. She wrapped both arms around him, held him the way she had held him on the night his father died. The candle on the floor between them flickered. It threw their shadows on the dirt wall. Mother and son. Two shapes that had been pulled together by losing the same man 1 year ago. Wendell was breathing fast. She felt it against her collarbone. "Shh," she whispered. "Shh, my love. He is going to come back. He promised. What if he doesn't? He will. What if he doesn't?" She closed her eyes. What if? What if? What if? She had asked herself, what if every night for 7 years of her marriage? What if I run? What if I scream? What if I tell someone? What if no one believes me? What if no one comes? Tonight, the what if was different. Tonight, someone had already come. A man had walked out of a snowstorm, knelt in front of her son, told the truth instead of a comforting lie, made tea from willow bark when her boy was burning, held her hand on a porch and asked permission for nothing. She kissed the top of Wendell's head. "He will come back," she said, "because he promised." Yes. And he is a man who keeps promises. Yes. The boy buried his face deeper. Ma. Yes. If he comes back. Yes. Can he be my pa? She did not answer right away, because if she opened her mouth, she would cry. And tonight was not the night for crying. She tightened her arms around him. "Yes," she whispered. "If he comes back, he can be your pa." Above them, the first volley of gunfire shattered the night. Pike fired from the loft. He had built a small slot, 2 boards pried loose, just enough room for a rifle barrel, just enough angle to cover the porch in the front yard. He saw the riders come up the road, 8 of them, then 4 more, then 3 more, 15. He had counted it on the nose. The lead rider was Vidkun Drakmar. Pike knew the silhouette, the scar, the way the man carried his head slightly tilted to the left because of an old injury from a knife fight in El Paso. Pike took a long, slow breath. He did not want to kill. He had killed. Plenty. In the war. After the war. For Drakmar. He had not enjoyed any of it. He had decided, at 60, not to do it any more unless God himself put the rifle in his hands. Tonight, God had put the rifle in his hands. He did not aim for Vidkun. He aimed for the lead horse. The horse went down. The rider rolled. The whole formation broke. Riders shouted, wheeled, tried to reform. That was when Rurik came out of the trees behind them. It was not a battle. It was an undoing. Marisol would never forget the sound of it, not the gunfire, not the shouting. The other thing, the strange thing, the silence between the shots, a whole storm full of silence. She held Wendell. She listened. She prayed. Rurik moved through the trees like he had been born in them. He took the second man with the butt of his rifle. The man dropped face first into the snow, did not get up. The third man saw him coming, raised a pistol. Rurik shot him in the shoulder, not the chest. The shoulder. The man screamed, dropped the gun, sat down hard in the snow. 2 of the riders ran for the barn, trying to flank the cabin. Rurik cut them off at the corral. He did not shoot them. He swung the rifle like a club. Once, twice, they went down. Inside the cabin loft, Pike kept firing. He took horses. He took saddlebags. He took hats off heads. He gave them no place to settle, no formation to hold, no wall to hide behind. The men who had come up the mountain expecting to slaughter a widow were standing in a blizzard of bullets and shadows, and they were starting to run. Vidkun Drakmar did not run. He scrambled to his feet from the fallen horse, drew his pistol, fired 3 times into the loft window. Pike staggered back from the slot. A red spot bloomed on his shoulder. He cursed once, quietly, the way an old soldier curses, without anger, just acknowledgement. He pressed his glove against the wound, picked the rifle up with the other hand, reset. Vidkun was already moving toward the cabin door. He was going for the front. He was going to kick it in. He was going to find the woman and the boy. He did not know about the cellar, but he knew there was someone in there. He did not get to the door. Rurik came around the side of the cabin and met him on the porch. They were the same height. That was the first thing Vidkun noticed. Vidkun Drakmar had been the tallest man in any room his whole life. He had used it. He had hurt people with it. He had walked into rooms and watched men step backward for him, the way a small dog steps backward for a big one. Tonight he stepped onto a porch and found a man his own size, with a rifle and a face he half remembered from years ago. Rurik did not raise his rifle. Vidkun raised his. Vandermeer, Drakmar, you are smaller than I remember. You always lied about your own height, Vidkun, and you always thought you were better than us. I was. Vidkun laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind of laugh a man uses to buy himself a half-second. He fired. The shot went wide because Rurik had already moved. Vidkun did not get a second shot. Rurik closed the distance in 2 steps, caught the rifle with his left hand, drove his right elbow into Vidkun's jaw. Vidkun's head snapped back. He went sideways into the porch rail. The rail cracked. Rurik did not let him fall. Rurik held him up by the front of his coat, held him up, and looked at him. You killed Anders Brackenridge. Who? The boy's father. You killed him for going to the sheriff. That farmer, the one with the post, that was an accident. You are a liar. Vandermeer, we are the same kind of man. No, Vidkun. We are. We did the same things. For the same money. You only stopped because you got tired. Rurik leaned in close. I stopped. Because of a fire. With 3 children inside it. Vidkun went still. I stopped. Because you held the lamp. And smiled. Vandermeer. And tonight, there is a boy in this cabin who is going to grow up with his mother in a house that is not on fire. He squeezed his fist. Vidkun's coat tore. And you are not going to kill him. He drove his forehead into Vidkun's nose. The crack was sharp, final. Vidkun crumpled. Rurik let him fall, rolled him onto his stomach with 1 boot, tied his hands with a length of leather strap, tight, tighter than necessary. Then he dragged him off the porch and dropped him in the snow. The remaining men were running. Rurik watched them disappear down the road into the storm. He counted in his head. 2 were down in the trees. 2 more in the corral. Vidkun on the porch. The scout up the road. 3 on the road. Hit by pike. Not dead. Not getting up either. That left maybe 5 who had ridden away. 5 who would scatter into the storm. 5 who would not come back tonight. Rurik allowed himself 1 breath. Just 1. Then he turned and ran for the cabin. Pike was on the floor of the loft, bleeding, but sitting up, pressed hard against his shoulder with a rolled wool blanket. Pike, I'm fine, son. Like hell. It's a graze, mostly. It missed the bone. Pike. Pike grabbed his wrist. His grip was strong. For a 60-year-old man, Rurik felt 20 years of cavalry in that grip. Marisol, the boy, now, go. Rurik went. He came down the loft ladder 3 rungs at a time, through the kitchen, to the pantry. He pulled the false back of the pantry shelf away, knocked twice on the floor hatch. Marisol, it's me. The hatch flew open. She was already pushing it from below. He reached down, pulled her up, pulled the boy up after her. Wendell threw his arms around Rurik's waist before Rurik could even straighten. The boy did not say a word. He just held on. Rurik put his huge hand on the back of the boy's head, pressed him close, felt him shaking. You are safe, Wendell. You are safe. It's over. For tonight, it's over. Marisol's face was white. Her eyes searched him head to toe. Where are you bleeding? I'm not. Show me. Marisol, I am not bleeding. Pike took one in the shoulder. He is fine. He says it's a graze. He is 60. A graze is not fine. I know. Get him down here. Yes, ma'am. He almost smiled. Almost. By dawn. The blood on the porch had frozen into dark crusts. The wind had stopped. The storm had moved off east. The sun came up the way it does after the worst nights. Soft, pale, like a quiet apology. Rurik dragged the bound men into the barn, 6 of them, including Vidkun, tied them to posts, watered them, did not feed them, locked the door. He came back to the cabin. Marisol had bandaged Pike's shoulder. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in his good hand, pale but steady. Wendell sat very close to him, not speaking, just watching the bandage, like he needed to see it to make sure the bleeding had really stopped. Goldie, Marisol said. What?
She's still on the road, to Butte, to send the wire. She does not know what happened tonight. She'll be fine. The roads are open now. The marshal is the one we have to wait for. 4 days. 4 days. With 6 tied men in our barn. 5 if you count Vidkun. He counts. She let out a small, unsteady laugh. It was the first time she had laughed since the night Octavian Drakmar had stepped onto her porch. Rurik looked at her.
He had not realized until that moment that he had been waiting to hear her laugh. The next morning, Marisol made a decision. She did not tell Rurik before she made it. She did not tell Pike. She did not tell Wendell. She put on Magnus's hat, took the small revolver Rurik had left on the kitchen mantel, slipped it into the pocket of her coat, slipped the cellar letter and the $800 into a satchel, and she rode down to Silver Hollow, alone. Rurik realized she was gone when he came back from feeding the horses. He saw the empty hook where her coat had hung. He saw the cold spot where Magnus's hat had been on the chair. He saw the small note on the kitchen table, written in her careful schoolgirl hand. Rurik, forgive me. I will not have him take another thing from me, not even my fight. Stay with Wendell. I will be back by dark. Marisol. He put the note down very slowly. He did not break anything. He did not shout. He picked up his rifle, walked into the bedroom where Wendell was reading. Wendell. Yes. Stay with Mr. Pike. Lock the door behind me. Do not open it for anyone except me or your mother, or Pike calling you. Where's Ma? She went to do a brave thing. I am going to make sure she lives through it. The boy did not cry. The boy nodded. Rurik kissed the top of his head and left. Marisol walked into the lobby of the Silver Hollow Hotel. The clerk knew her. Old Mr. Greery. He looked up, surprised. Mrs. Quinlevin. Mr. Drakmar. He is not receiving, ma'am. He will receive me. She put a coin on the counter. Not a tip, a statement. Tell him the widow has come about the debt. Mr. Greery stared, then he nodded, slowly, climbed the stairs. 3 minutes later, he came back down. Room 203. Octavian Drakmar was sitting at a small round table by the window when she walked in, white gloves on a chair beside him, coffee, a boiled egg, toast, a man having breakfast. He smiled when he saw her. Mrs. Quinlevin. Mr. Drakmar, please, sit. She did not sit. She set the satchel on the table, opened it, pulled out the $800, stacked it, bound, neat, the way Magnus had stacked it, slid it across the table. Your debt, plus 50 over. Octavian Drakmar looked at the money, looked at her. He laughed softly. My dear, I do not want money. I told you that. Yes, you do. I beg your pardon. She slid the letter across the table. The letter from the seller. The one with his seal. He stopped laughing. Across the room, there was the smallest sound, a board settling, the kind of small sound a hotel makes in a small town in the morning. Marisol kept her eyes on his face. She did not look at the door. She did not need to. She knew. He had come. She had not asked him to come. She had not wanted him to come. But he had come. The way a mountain comes when you call its name. This is one of 9 letters, Mr. Drakmar, Marisol said softly. I do not know what you are referring to. You wrote it 2.5 years ago to my husband. You instructed him to move crates from the depot at Butte to the trading posts above the Missouri. You signed it with your seal. Mrs. Quinlevin.
My husband kept the letters, 8 more of them, with dates, with shipment numbers, with the names of the men who paid him in cash. They are not in the cabin. They are not on this property. They are in the safe keeping of a respectable woman in this town who has copies of your bookkeeping ledger from the summer of '79. Octavian Drachmar's face went still, very still. Bridget Pernod. Yes. That woman has been smiling at me in her bakery for 5 years. She has. How? Patient, Mr. Drachmar. Some women are patient. We learn it. Early. And you intend. What? I intend for you to walk out of this town, now, and never come back. I do not want to see you arrested. I do not want a trial. I want my house quiet. I want my boy safe. I want this over. So you take the money. You take your bag. You ride for Denver. You do not come back to Montana ever. Or those 9 letters, plus the ledger, will be in the hands of the marshal in Helena by Friday morning. Her hands were not shaking. She had not known her hands would not shake until now. But they did not shake. Octavian Drachmar studied her for a long time. You did not bring this proposal to me alone, Mrs. Quinlevin. You are too smart for that. Where is he? She did not answer. She did not need to. The door behind her opened. She knew without turning, by the way the air in the room changed, by the way Octavian's face changed. Rurik Vandermeer stepped into the doorway, and he filled it. Octavian. Vandermeer. You sent 15 men to her cabin last night. I did. None of them are coming home today. Octavian Drachmar's jaw tightened. He flicked his eyes to a small bell on the side table. A bell that was meant to summon the bodyguards from the next room. The bodyguards were not coming. Rurik had passed them in the hallway. They were sleeping now. Octavian saw the answer in his face. His hand went to the white napkin on the table, slowly, slowly, toward the small revolver he had laid beneath it. Mr. Drachmar? That was Rurik. Quiet. If your hand moves another inch, I will put a bullet through it. The hand stopped. Octavian smiled, thinly. Old Vandermeer, you used to be the best of my men. Did you know that? You were better than Vidkun, better than anyone I had. You have such hatred in your eyes, even now, after all these years. I did not come for the hatred. Then what? I came so my wife does not have to be alone in this room with you. Marisol's breath caught. He had said, my wife, not this woman, not Mrs. Quinlevin, my wife. She had not married him, not yet. But she had been his wife since the night he had held her hand on the porch. Maybe earlier than that,
maybe from the moment he had carried her out of the snow. Octavian saw it on her face. His thin smile turned into something darker. "Ah, I see. Well, Vandermeer, I have something for you, before this is over." "What?" "A piece of news about your mother." Rurik went still. Marisol felt the change in the air. "Selma Vandermeer. Yes, I knew her. Did you know that?" "I do not believe you." "No, you should. She was a housemaid at my father's estate in St. Louis, 1845 to 1848. She was a pretty thing, quiet, steady. She left suddenly one spring night, took 2 of my father's silver candlesticks, and ran with a child. Rurik did not move, but his eyes went hard. "You think this hurts me, Octavian? I have spent my life, among other things, cleaning up my father's old debts, his old enemies, his old runaways. When I tracked her here, to Montana, she had remarried. She had a second son. You, your brother Roderick, was the boy in her arms, the night she ran." He smiled. "I never sent men to her. I let her live out her life, because I wanted you, the second son, born free, born clean, the son who did not know his mother was a thief. I wanted you to grow up and work for me and earn back every coin she ever stole, with your hands, with your fists. And you did. After your wife and your boy passed, you came down out of grief and you walked right into my office, and you worked for me beautifully for 3 years. Rurik did not blink. Until the fire. Until the fire. That fire was not the first one I had refused. It was the first one I broke a man's head over. Yes, yes, you always had a weakness for children. I never understood it, but there it was. Octavian Drakmar smiled. Now you know the truth, Vandermeer. Your mother was a thief. Your whole life was a debt I was collecting. You can run now, or you can finish what you started. I do not care which. There was a long silence. Marisol watched Rurik, the lines of his face, the way the muscle in his jaw worked. She had braced herself for rage, for violence, for the breaking of furniture and bodies. That is not what came. What came was something else. Rurik laughed, just once, a short, tired, almost gentle laugh. Octavian, yes, my mother did not steal anything from you. She did. She took what she had earned from a house that was not paying her enough to feed 2 boys. She took 2 candlesticks to pay for passage and food and a chance for her sons to have something better than your father's table. Vandermeer, you can call that theft. Your father probably did. Your priest probably did. I do not. He stepped forward, closer to the table. His huge frame shadowed half the room.
My mother was a brave woman who took what was hers and ran, and she gave my brother and me a whole life, far away from your family and your father and you. You are sentimental. No, I am clear-eyed. For the first time in my life.
He gestured to the money on the table. That stays as payment for every dollar you think she ever owed you, plus interest, plus damages. That is the last cent you will ever take from her line.
I will burn this hotel down before I take that money, Vandermeer. You will not burn anything down, because you will be on a federal wagon, chained, by Friday. You think the marshal will come? I know he will, even with my deputies in his way. Your deputies are not coming either, Octavian. Goldie sent your wire from Butte 2 days ago, around your sheriff. The marshal is already on the road. He'll be at the cabin tomorrow, not Friday. Tomorrow. Octavian Drachmar's face changed.
Just slightly. But Marisol saw it. The face of a man who has just learned the game has been over for 2 days. And he was the only one who didn't know it. He moved for the napkin, for the revolver. Rurik fired, 1 shot, through the back of Octavian's hand, not the chest, the hand. Octavian screamed, stumbled backward. The chair tipped. He hit the floor. The revolver skittered across the wood. Marisol did not flinch. She picked the revolver up off the floor, tucked it into her satchel, walked across the room, knelt beside Octavian Drachmar, pulled out a clean white napkin from the breakfast tray, pressed it to his bleeding hand. He stared at her, eyes wide. "You," he gasped, "you are bandaging me?" "Yes," Marisol said quietly. "Why?" "Because I am not you, Mr. Drachmar." She tied the napkin tight around the wound. "And neither is he." She stood, walked back to Rurik, took his arm. The two of them walked out of room 203, down the stairs, past Mr. Greery, out into the gray morning sun. The marshal arrived at sundown the next day. His name was U.S. Marshal Hadrian Cope, a tall man, skinny, white mustache to his chin. He had 4 deputies behind him, and a transport wagon, with iron rings bolted to the floor. He listened to everything. He read the cellar letter. He read 3 pages of Goldie's ledger. He looked at Wendell sitting at the kitchen table, the boy holding his small wooden horse very tight in both hands. Marshal Cope took off his hat, sat at the table, looked Wendell in the eye. "Son, did you see a man named Vidkun Drachmar the night your father died?" Wendell nodded. "Will you say it to a judge, in a courtroom, in Helena?" Wendell looked at Rurik. Rurik nodded once. Wendell turned back to the marshal. "Yes, sir." "Thank you, son." The marshal stood, put his hat back on, took Octavian Drachmar, Vidkun Drachmar, Sheriff Ezekiah Tovar, and the 6 men from the barn, loaded them into the wagon. The wagon rolled away into the dusk. 3 weeks later, Pike had healed enough to ride. He left for Helena to testify. Goldie went too, to bring her ledger in person, to put it before the court. Rurik did not go. The marshal had said he was not needed. The cellar letter and the ledger and Wendell's testimony were enough. The marshal had also said, privately, to Rurik, with a small knowing smile, "That homicide charge against you, there never was a federal warrant on that son. It was Drakmar's private bounty, made to look like law. Same trick he played with you up here. You have not been a wanted man for 3 years. Nobody just bothered to tell you." Rurik had stared. He had been hiding on a mountain, dodging shadows, for the better part of a decade, for nothing or for something, because the years on the mountain had taught him how to listen, and how to wait, and how to bring a sick boy back from the edge with willow bark. He was not sure those were lessons he could have learned in a town. In the spring of 1885, they were married, a small ceremony at the church in Silver Hollow. Marisol wore a pale blue dress. Goldie had sewn it for her. Goldie cried more than anyone else in the church, including the bride. Pike stood up beside Rurik, his arm in a sling, still healing. Wendell walked Marisol down the aisle. The boy was 13 now. He held her arm with all the grave seriousness of a man twice his size. When they reached the altar, the minister cleared his throat. "Who gives this woman?" Wendell looked up. His chin came forward. "I do. Her son." Marisol pressed her free hand to her mouth. Rurik looked at the boy, his eyes shining. The boy stepped back. Marisol turned, took Rurik's hands, both of them, both her small hands inside both his enormous ones. The minister spoke. The minister blessed. The minister asked. They both said yes. That night, in the new bedroom of the new cabin Rurik had built, up the slope, with his own hands, a real cabin, 3 rooms, real glass in the windows, a stone hearth that drew clean. He carried her over the threshold. She was laughing, her face against his collarbone. He set her down inside. He looked at her. She looked at him. Rurik. Yes, I have been someone's property. I have been someone's chore. I have been someone's silence. Marisol. Tonight, be careful with me. I am not used to being someone's wife. He smiled, slowly, that rare, slow, mountain smile. Marisol Vandermeer. She closed her eyes. The name was almost too much to hear. Yes. He cupped her face in both his huge hands, bent his forehead to hers. Marisol Vandermeer. You have never met a man my size in your life, so let me show you how it is done. He paused. His thumb traced slow across her cheek. Not loud, not rough, not afraid. His lips brushed hers. Soft. Another brush. Patient. Another. Like you are the only thing in the room, because you are. She breathed in, for maybe the first time in her whole life. 5 years later, the cabin had grown. A second story, a wraparound porch, a small flower garden Marisol had tried very hard to keep alive against the Montana frost. 2 small children played in the dust of the front yard. A girl, 4 years old, Selma, named for the grandmother she would never meet, dark eyes like her father. A boy. 2, Roderick, named for the uncle who had died at Shiloh, already too curious for anyone's good. Marisol sat on the porch swing, one hand resting on the round of her stomach. The third was coming. In late summer. Wendell was 18, almost as tall as Rurik now. He was leaving in the fall, going east, to Helena, to attend the new medical college. He had decided 2 years ago, after watching his father, that's how he called Rurik. Now, pull a thorn out of a neighbor's horse with such patience that the animal had not flinched. Pa knows how to fix things, Wendell had said. I want to fix people. Goldie had moved up to the cabin 2 years before. Her bakery had been sold. Her hands had grown too unsteady for the kneading. She had a room upstairs now, with a window that looked east, so she could see the sun rise. She rocked Roderick to sleep most nights. She told him stories about a bakery in Silver Hollow and about a winter long ago when his mother had walked into a kitchen with flour on her apron and met a giant on the roof. Pike came every other month. He was a U.S. Marshal himself now. He held little Selma on his lap, showed her the badge, let her play with the silver star until her small fingers tired. He never married. Some men do not. But this family was his family, and everyone in it knew. That evening, the light was the long gold that mountain country gives in summer. Rurik came out of the trees with a clutch of huckleberries in his hat. He had been picking them for an hour. Marisol had asked, specifically, I have a craving, and I am not above sending you up the slope for it. He had laughed and gone. He was 44. His beard had silver in it. His knees ached when he stood up too fast. There was an old wound in his shoulder that complained when the rain came, but he could still walk for hours. He could still chop wood for the whole winter in one afternoon. He could still scoop both his children up at once, one in each arm, and spin them until they screamed. He could still hold his wife, carefully, as if she were the most important thing he had ever held. Marisol watched him come. Wendell saw him first. The boy stood up, walked off the porch, met him at the edge of the yard. Pa. Son. Storm coming. Rurik looked east, far over the ridges. A wall of dark cloud was rolling in, slow, heavy, the first storm of late summer. He smiled. He set the hat full of huckleberries on a fence post. He rested one hand on his son's shoulder. The two of them stood looking at the sky. "Wendell." "Yes." "Do you remember what I told you about being a man your size?" "Yes, Pa." "Tell me." "A man your size is not the man with the biggest fists. He is the man with the biggest heart, the one who is gentle when he could be cruel, the one who is patient when he could be angry, the one who builds when he could break." Rurik squeezed his shoulder. "That's right. I remember every word, Pa. I know you do." Marisol stood up from the porch swing, came down the steps, one hand on her belly. Selma ran to her. Roderick followed. She gathered them against her side, looked at her husband and her oldest boy at the edge of the yard. The storm rolled closer, a first far rumble of thunder. Rurik turned, walked across the yard, met her at the foot of the porch. He laid his huge hand against her belly, felt the small kick under his palm, smiled. "Storm's coming." She tilted her face up. "Let it come. Are we ready? For this storm, or for the next one, or for the next? All of them." She put her smaller hand over his. "My love, we have been ready since the night you knocked on my door." He bent down, kissed her forehead, then her mouth. Slow, warm, familiar, real. Behind them, Wendell scooped up his little sister so the rain would not catch her bare feet. Roderick laughed because his big brother was laughing. Goldie called from inside that the bread was almost out of the oven and somebody better come pull it. Pike's letter sat on the kitchen table, promising a visit by Tuesday. The thunder rolled. The first warm, fat drops of rain hit the roof. Rurik Vandermeer, once a mountain man, once a man with a price on his head, once a widower, once a father with no son, once a son with no mother, once a soldier, once a hired fist, once, held his wife on the porch of the home he had built and watched his life, his real life, his chosen life, his true life, run laughing into the cabin ahead of the rain. Some men come down out of the mountains once, then they never need to leave again.